Welcome, everybody. I'm Noreen Savage, and this is Starting Out Bright. I'm so glad you're here, and you are in for a treat because Verlin is in the house. But before we get to our conversation, I just want to introduce myself in case we've never met, who I am, and especially who I'm not. I am nobody official with Bright Line Eating. These Zooms are produced to offer hope and a little bit of information as we go along on our Bright Line Eating journeys. And if you haven't found Bright Line Eating, I'll tell you how I did. It's almost 3 years ago. My friend posted on Facebook that she had lost 57 pounds with a program called Bright Line Eating. If anybody was interested, they could just send her a message. So my hot little fingers got to Messenger as quickly as possible. And I got a hold of Lori, and she proceeded to tell me that there was a book by Dr. Susan Pierce Thompson called Bright Line Eating. And in the book, Dr. Thompson talks about 4 bright lines that you don't cross. No sugar, no flour, 3 meals a day, weighed in measured portions. And when Lori told me that was sunk. I thought there is absolutely, positively no way I could do that. But I really like Lori. We went for lunch, and she then told me 2 things. She told me lots more, but she suggested 2 things. Get the book and get into a community called We Eat Bright with Lines, which is a private group still going strong. There are many groups, including Starting Out Bright, which is associated with these Zoom chats, but many groups on Facebook. So I got in the group, I bought the book, and I just sat and I watched and I read the stories. I watched the transformations happening with people all over the world, losing weight, sometimes 10 or 15 or 20 pounds, but often 50 or 100 or 150. And that got my attention because here I was at 270 pounds, and I realized I was in a lot of pain. I had sleep apnea, waking up. My husband every night was snoring. My feet were swollen for about a year. My knee was in excruciating pain. My back hurt. You get the story. I was a mess. And my body was letting me know that I was in trouble. And I knew I was close to becoming diabetic too, because I was feeling neuropathy. And so here I was in this group, and I was feeling hope for the first time in a long time that maybe this one time would work. So I promised myself that if I lasted 1 year with Bright Line Eating, I would do what my friend Lori did. I would post on my private Facebook page, and I would help anybody I could. Well, just before that year was up, I was getting ready to post, and I'm a Christian. I felt God say, Noreen, you can do more than that. You could connect people. Here it was the time of Zooms, and if only I could connect these people who have been so inspirational to me with those who needed the help just as I had, it would be great. And that's how the Zooms were born, but they don't just happen because people have to actually say yes to tell their story. And in this case, I was actually recommended to get a hold of Verlin by our good friend Ed Pettit, and I thought, how can you lose that when you have such a great friend as Ed? So please help me welcome Verlin Conkle. Verlin, so good to see you.
Thank you. Thank you. I'm excited to be here and to visit with you tonight.
Yes, it's so great. And, we talked the other day. It was great to get to know each other. And I told a little bit about my story. So I just like to start out by asking you, if you could, you can go back as far as or as little as you want. What brought you to Bright Line Eating to do something so drastic as 4 bright lines? Welcome.
Well, without going into a whole lot of detail, I've struggled with my weight since I was probably, I'm guessing around the 4th grade, 5th grade, something like that. My parents were divorced when I was about 3 or 4, and so I spent some time going back and forth. But in the 4th grade, I moved in with my dad, who lived out on a farm, and I ate. I mean, there was nothing to do. We had all this farm food. We lived around the corner from my grandparents. My grandma was a farmer's wife and a cook and a baker, and I ate. As I got older, my dad was also an alcoholic, and so he drank and I ate, and that was kind of the thing that we did then. And I became the fat kid of the class. You know, when I was in grade school, there was only one or two of us. The obesity epidemic for children wasn't like it is today. And so that was just kind of the role. And I was the overweight kid all through high school. So then I get to college, my freshman year of college, and I gained more weight, and it was getting ready for the spring semester, and I had to buy new clothes. And that was the first time I kind of had a little breakdown when I went to buy jeans, and they were this enormous size and they were tight. And I just thought, enough is enough. You know, there was a person a long time ago who said, stop the insanity. Well, that's kind of where I was at. And I thought, you know what? If I don't put it in my mouth, I won't have to take it off. And thus started a short pattern of anorexic behavior. I remember going, days or two without eating just to see if I could see the scale move. And that's when my first initial issues with the scale came into play. And wanting to chase that number, chase that size, and only if I was this. And that semester, I did drop from about 250 down to 180.
Which is crazy.
Just from January to May. I know, it was terrible. It was horrible on my body.
Wow.
I was running all over a college campus, so there was a lot of cardio involved. But it was basically starving. And so I kind of held that weight on through college, graduated, went through a very stressful summer. You're going to see a pattern in the story here. I went through a stressful summer and gained probably 30, 40 pounds. Wow. Then got engaged, and I was determined that I wasn't going to be heavy in my wedding pictures, as vain as that sounds, but that's where I was at that time in my life. And so I reduced my eating again, started trying to work out some, and did lose the weight. And then I gained it back. And it was at that point when I started really freaking out about the fact that I was overweight, or what if I gained that weight back. I was so desperate for the scales not to move in that direction again. And I talked to my wife and I said, I might have a problem with this. And she's like, no, I think, I've seen you go up and down, but you're a big guy. You're just a big guy. You've got big bones. It's okay. And I thought, it's not. My wife got pregnant, and I was the wonderful husband that gained 30 pounds with her pregnancy. I'm craving this. Okay, yeah, I'll have some of that too. And was overweight for our daughter. About that time, FinFin come along. So I was on the FinFin train, lost weight on that, got real thin again on that. Worked out because it went off the market because, the bad things it was doing to the heart. And came back and slowly started putting that weight back on. And it's been a kind of a roller coaster ever since, though I never got heavy until my stepmom was diagnosed with cancer. And she'd been my stepmom all my life. So it was like my second mom. And again, you're seeing the emotional connection kick in. And I made the conscious choice at that point to say, you know what? I'm getting ready to go through something that's emotionally traumatizing, or it's going to be emotionally traumatizing to me, because I was helping care for her and take care of her and do these things. And I made the conscious decision at that point. I don't care. I don't care if I gain weight, because my focus has to be taking care of somebody else. Can anybody relate to the whole taking care of somebody else thing? Mm-hmm. So in doing so, I gained some weight. And then my stepmom, my youngest daughter was born. My stepmom was diagnosed, and she passed away about 9 months later. A few months after that, my dad was diagnosed with cancer. And so it was just one thing after another, after another. He passed away, took care of him through all of that. And through that whole time, I never once cared about the scales. I ate for energy. I ate for support. I ate for love. I ate for all of that. Even though I was surrounded by, a loving, caring family, I still was dealing with that. And so after he passed, I thought, okay,
I'm sorry, you just kind of put the whole thought of losing weight on hold. And we're just dealing with what was in front of you, which was maybe kind of a care for yourself. at that point, right?
It was self-care. I mean, I knew it. I mentioned my dad was an alcoholic. I wasn't going to turn to alcohol to calm my nerves, to soothe me, to whatever. My mother had uh, different prescriptions and smoked marijuana and some other things. So I wasn't going to go down that path either. I didn't want to do either one of those things. And so I consciously turned to food. I mean, I remember saying, my mom does this, my dad does this, I guess I'll eat. Little did I know what I was truly saying, the impact that was significantly going to have on my life. But so I struggled. I continued to struggle. And some days, some years I would be a little thinner, some years I'd be heavier. But fast forward to 2020, and I worked at a health department, and COVID hit, right? So 2020 hit. I was working long hours in an insane, stressful situation. And then my son-in-law was in an accident where he ended up succumbing to his injuries and passing away, leaving my 23-year-old daughter, I believe at the time, to raise their 1-year-old son. So we had family trauma again. That summer, a few more things happened that just left me devastated, just shattered as an individual. And I remember being so sick. And on top of that, I got COVID that summer. And so I was just at a very, very sick, very desperate place. I felt like I failed as a father. I failed as a husband. I was just shattered. I was truly shattered. So my background is in counseling and mental health. And so I knew I needed to reach out to a therapist. So I reached out to a therapist friend of mine. And at our first session, he said, I need to stop you and make sure you're safe. You just pegged out the PTSD scale, the depression scale, and the anxiety scale. Are you safe? Or can you promise me you're not going to hurt yourself? And I laughed and I said, did you hear how many people are depending on me? Of course, I'm not going to hurt myself. I'm here to get myself better. I need to be better because I'm not right. And I know I'm not. And so worked with him for a few months, but my physical, and it got a little better, but my physical abilities weren't. I was getting sick. My blood pressure was starting to bounce around. I was exhausted. I would literally come home from work, have to take a nap before I would have dinner. That's how just drained I was. And I wasn't getting better. And nothing they give me made me better. And we were at a loss. That they were beginning to call it long haul COVID because it was affecting all my systems in my body, including my mental health. And so in December, a good friend of mine, kind of like you, somebody you knew, had been posted, oh, I've lost this weight and I'm not working out as much and I'm doing all these things. And I thought, what are you doing? She's a vegan who ran anyway. What do you mean you're losing weight now? What changed? So I messaged her in the middle of December again. Now, mind you, I was in such a desperate state. I wasn't sure how much longer I was going to make it. I mean, I was going downhill. And not necessarily what I would say directly weight related, but it was certainly not helping by the food choices I was making. And she said, well, I'm going to send you a link. You're going to love it because you're going to love the psychology. You're going to find it fascinating. Okay, great. So I got the link. I ordered the audio book and I started listening to it. And I listened to Susan's story. And I was immediately intrigued. And because my professional background is in mental health, I understood the serotonin and the dopamine, the role that those chemicals play in our brain. And I thought, you know what? I don't know what's going on with me. The medical community really doesn't know what's going on with me. But I do know one thing. I need my brain in top working order to fight whatever's going on and to give it its best chance to heal me. So what is this? What do I need to eat? How do I need to eat it? And so I just started in. I love that you have the magnet in the slideshow because the magnet is truly, the book and the magnet is what's guided my whole journey. I put the magnet on the fridge. I got a little scales and I started weighing my food. And the prep picture of all my food, that was early on when I used to cut up all my vegetables and have them in 6-ounce baggies and those type of things. And I started with day one, first meal. And I thought, I've been through so much in the last year, especially my whole life really, but the last year, that I tried to control. I gave everything I got to control forces outside of me. The only thing I can control how much I eat. I can control what I eat and stop, and I can do that. And I can't do it for a week, but I can do it for this meal right in front of me. And 1 became 2, became 3. My first goal was to do it for a week. And for the first time, my pants got loose all of a sudden. And remember, I had that little anorexic behavior, so I was scared about the scales.
Right.
Because we hadn't had a positive relationship before. And I thought, okay. And it said, well, only weigh once in a while. And I thought, oh my God, that can't be, I can't do that. I couldn't possibly. So I thought, well, I'm going to look at this from a science point of view. I'm going to just chart my data, chart my scores, and we'll see what happens with it. So I weighed, there in the beginning, I was weighing every 2 or 3 days, but the scales were moving and I was amazed. And so I kept the data points, and I noticed you had the roller coaster on there too.
Yeah.
Because that's what my weight loss did. I would drop and then I would gain 2 or 3 pounds, and I would hold it for 2 or 3 days and then I would drop again. And that was my pattern. Well, probably for about the first year and 2 or 3 months that I held that. And what that helped me do was acknowledge that that's my natural body's rhythm. So guess what? I didn't sabotage myself when I noticed I gained a pound or 2. I didn't start in with the, see, you can't do this and you're no good and it's not going to work for you and it works for everybody else, and all that negative sabotage self-talk that we go into. It just shut that down right away. And I'm like, yeah, okay, so I'm gaining. So guess what? That means I'm going to lose again here soon. This is going to be awesome. And I did. And so 1 week became 2, became a month. And I thought, okay, I've done this for 30 days and I've lost 8 pounds. Wow. And I'm shrinking. I mean, we'll get into the fluffer fish thing later, but
well, and I did some
shrinking.
investigating too, Verlin. I looked on your
Did you?
Yeah. And here are the stats. You said in 50 days, you lost 20 pounds, okay, which is great. But more importantly, you wrote that you lost 4 pant sizes. You went down 4 pant sizes in 20 pounds. That is crazy. But it's
Isn't that
like
amazing?
we were talking about, it's like weight loss is like a sport after a while. And you don't even realize it. But for you especially, coming in from your background and not a very friendly association with the scale, you were coming in now to heal yourself, it sounds like. But as a residual, you're losing the weight and just taking these highs and lows of this, what do you call it? It just a set point that you're meeting, that it's going up and then coming down. I mean, that's what I think it is. It's like your body's fighting your mind, like who's going to win? I don't know.
Well, our body is an amazing thing, and our brain is designed to keep us alive. There's the mammalian part of the brain, which refers to the oldest part of the brain. And that's where your basic life support happens. That's where your breathing happens and your hunger happens and those kind of things. What happens so often, and I was an example, when you starve yourself, that part of your brain kicks in and goes, wait a minute, hold on, hold up. We're going to stop burning calories because you're going to get too thin and die. So we're going to hold on to all that fat. So any bite you take, good or bad, we're going to hold on to it. And when you experience weight loss, it kicks that in. And so that's what that gain would be for a couple of pounds. And then the body's like, oh, wait a minute, hold on. Because you're eating 3 times a day, because you're eating balanced, nutritious food, it goes, oh, false alert. Okay, release. And then you go on your way again. And what I've noticed is now that I've been at what I'm guessing is my normal size body, because I never knew what that was before. I've been at that since about April.
You were experiencing this weight roller coaster when really it was your body's adaptive mechanism to make sure, hey, we've been down this road before. Remember those times you were kind of trying to starve yourself, right?
Right.
So you were doing it differently. You were not as focused on the scale, but just focused on one meal at a time is what it seemed like to me.
Simply one meal at a time. In the book, it talks about your normal body size. And I thought, I really don't know what that is. And so I set initial goals. And in the book, it actually says you'll probably surpass them. And I thought, yeah, okay, sure, we will. And sure enough, I got smaller. I was actually smaller at a heavier weight than I'd ever been. And by that, I mean, when I reached, I think I was about 180, I could wear 32 and 31 waist jeans, which I was in a 40 when I started. And so I was amazed. And it was because my body wasn't swollen anymore. The sugar, the flour, all of that affects our joints and our muscles and the way our body's designed. And it causes us to swell and to puff up, and we get bloated. And that's why we experience so much pain and aching in our joints, because that's where that settles in at. And so by taking that away, my body shrank. I laugh and say I look like a deflated balloon sometimes, because that's exactly what happens. I deflated. And with that, the weight loss was gone. And for the first time ever, I haven't been attracted or addicted to a number. It's not a number of a scales, not a size of clothes. And then I started to kind of enjoy the ride and go, you know what? Let's see where this goes. Let's just see. And so I didn't go into maintenance mode. In fact, I'm just now kind of starting to play with it, because I wanted to see where my body would go eating this way. Because guess what else happened? I started feeling good. Right. I started thinking better. And all of a sudden I'm like, I wish somebody would explain this to me years ago. I'm in midlife now easily. And I could have spent my youth being thin. But you know what? It's okay. We all come to these things at different times in our life. I have friends who've struggled as well for years. And I've even told my family members, it took me to be in 52 to get it. I had to be desperate. It was an alignment of the stars between my desperation, the sicknesses I was, and I don't want to say the magical cure, but a system that made sense. For the first time ever, I was educated about how to eat to fuel my body. And I was educated as to what foods affect your brain. And again, with my mental health background, that made so much sense to me that I'm like, well, of course, let's don't, if we can stabilize that serotonin, serotonin and dopamine are the number one medications that are prescribed for mental health, to try to adjust and balance those. And if we can do that naturally, or certainly assist in doing that naturally, or choose not to eat foods that mess it up, then why wouldn't we do that? And so that was my whole motivation this time. I wanted to heal my brain, balance that serotonin and dopamine. And wow, along the way, I arrived in my right-sized body.
Do you remember how long, or like you mentioned the other day that you did have a detox, do you remember how long it took for you to come from this desperate place of really being scared in a way, with your mental health, your body just not feeling well at all? How long did it take, and what kind of detox do you remember at all, what you went through?
The first 2 to 3 weeks, I remember incredible fatigue. I was wore out, tired anyway, but I stayed incredibly fatigued. And I'm going to say, I had periods of time, and it's one of those things you don't really, for me, I didn't really realize I was feeling better until I was doing activities. But, like I could come home and eat supper and actually stay up till 8:30 or 9, which doesn't sound late, but considering I was coming home and going to bed at 5 till 7, eating, going back to bed, I was able to start to do more activities with my grandson. I was actually able to start doing more things with my kids and be out and about. And that happened, that just kind of, I had to look back and go, oh, but the original detox, well, I'm going to say over a month or so. And then, I kept waiting for happy, thin, and free. When am I going to get happy, thin, and free? When is this epiphany? When is this surge of excitement going to happen? And I don't know. Honestly, I'm thinking now it's starting to happen. But through that process, and again, this is, over 5 decades of storing toxins in my body and fueling myself the wrong way. So to expect that it was going to happen overnight, that I was going to get, purified overnight, would have been a little much. And if I was only coming at it for the goal of happy, thin, and free, then that would have been, I don't know that I would have achieved that either. But I truly was in a mindset that I'm going to nourish and heal my brain. And if I can do that, then that's going to be great. And if I'm, if I'm thin, great. If I'm not, well, whatever. But I'm learning how to eat. And honestly, now, Noreen, like we talked, this has never been about a diet for me. This is a way of life. I've got an awesome, amazing group of guys that I've connected with recently, some of which are actually on the group here tonight supporting me. But we're doing a thing where we Snapchat or we text our food, what we're having, what our meals are to each other. And it was funny. I happened to be going out with friends today to a Mexican restaurant, and I ordered a taco salad. Well, we all know it comes in a shell, and there's usually chips and all that. So I sent the picture, and they called me out on it. Ed called me out on it. You didn't eat the shell, did you? No, I didn't. And the funny thing was, first of all, 2 things. One, it doesn't bother me to go out to eat. I know what I can eat. And I've proven in the last year and a half that if I follow what I know I can order off the menu, then I'm just fine. Second of all, I didn't even think about wanting to eat the shell. I mean, it was like a dish to me. I didn't even, the chips were there on the table, didn't bother me, didn't call my name. The taco, before I would have dove into those chips and I would have dove into that shell, and I'd probably had some cheese sauce or something else that I shouldn't have had. But this has become a way of life for me. It's how I eat. It's what I do. I went to a family barbecue over the weekend. I didn't partake in the extra chips. I didn't, I just don't. It's just not me. I laugh and say as a kid, I wouldn't eat spinach and broccoli. And so now I eat both of those, but I don't eat the chips and soda that I used to as a kid. So
I want to make an observation here. And finding that picture of your meal prep really helped, because what I think happened to you very quickly with your first hyper-focused, not on a diet, but on getting well and just following the plan, you did really zero in on something that many people that I know, including myself, it took a while to get to. And that is this meal prep of really putting these baggies together. And then before you know it, it's that word automaticity. That is such a blessing. And for somebody new tonight or who's listening on podcast or YouTube, to me, the whole premise comes down to trying to make this automatic. And you do that by doing a repetition of the meals in a certain order. You have a long list of foods to choose from, like is shown on those magnets, which Verlin is talking about a magnet. If you can't see it, it's a magnet that's available through, Amazon, but Brightline Eating puts it out. And it has what on it? On the left side, it has the portions of everything.
Mm-hmm. So on the left side, it gives you your recipe. And so if you're in the weight loss portion, it tells you for breakfast, you need a protein, a grain, and a fruit. And then for lunch, you need, the same thing in the vegetable and all that. It goes through that. And then below that, it does your maintenance recipe the same way. Then in the middle section, it gives you everything. So if you're looking for a fat, this is how much of the different fats you could have. If you're looking for a fruit, this is how much of the different fruit. And then on the right side, it goes into, for a male, you have 6 ounces of protein. For a female, you have 4. And it actually, it's just wonderful. And so between reading the book and then I put that magnet on my fridge, and I did for the first probably 3 months or so at least, I did all of the chopping up the vegetables. I had my 6 ounces of whatever in each, my cucumbers, my celery, and my whatever. And so it made it quicker to actually make a meal because I could grab those out and go. Now that I've been at it for a longer time, I have my scales and I just kind of look and go, okay, yeah, I know I need a protein, I need a fat, and whatever. and I pull it out, I measure it on my plate or in my bowl, and then I go from there.
Yeah, that's how it's done. As long as you don't veer off that plan. It took me about maybe 5 weeks, and all of a sudden everything was just automatic in my head because I had followed the plan. And it's just a beautiful thing. The other advantage I think you really had, and you spoke about it a little bit, is understanding some of the science, that this isn't just about the food. And with all the emotional triggers you had before, like especially that year or so going up to this, if you could just speak a little bit with your expertise, understanding some of this.
Well, I think there's a few things really. One was that flour in any form, whether it's almond flour, wheat flour, because we get a lot of that. Well, can't you have the almond flour? Can't you have rice flour? Whatever. Flour in any form lights up your brain just like cocaine. And so, and again, this was something I joked about 30 years ago of, if I could just get off the white powder, the sugar, not realizing truly what I was saying. I said those words.
Wow.
Because obviously I wouldn't do cocaine, but, I did say that back in the day. And when I read that in the book, I thought, oh my God, that was a real kind of thing. And so, and then what I could never understand too was the fruit, because several other diets say, well, don't eat fruit because there's too much sugar. Well, she breaks that down and explains also why you can't have smoothies. So many fad diets and programs say, well, have a shake for dinner and shake for lunch, or blend this in your shake. And I was a shake king. I loved shakes. But understanding about the fiber bonds and how it releases that sugar quickly into your bloodstream versus chewing it, we're learning more and more science about how our food digests through our system and how serotonin is manufactured from our gut. We all talk about it's a gut instinct, and when we're nervous, we feel it in our stomach. Well, now we understand the science to know that that's the serotonin in the brain connected to the gut. And so if we can balance again that serotonin, if we're not adding white powder, refined powders, processed foods, and those chemicals, those toxins, if you will, into our system, that gives the body the chance to fight it and balance naturally and return to that natural homeostasis rhythm. So that really spoke to me a lot, truly. Just really understanding that.
Yeah, like I want to take you back to when you went to the therapist, because you shared with me something really incredible. And it's about getting on an antidepressant and where it doesn't always work for the person. And you gave a website that was it seems like a remarkable type of resource to figure that out. Can you talk about that? The website?
Absolutely. So one of the things, again, I mentioned earlier that the medicines that are used are serotonin, balancing the serotonin and the dopamine. And so for antidepressants, one of the main things is it's either going to increase it or it's going to increase how your body uses it, depending on the kind and the brand. And so back in this dark spell of my life, I actually reluctantly started on some antidepressants. And because I had family members that took them, I thought, okay, well, it's going to work for me because it works for them. And guess what? It doesn't. And that's the downside of medication, is that it's not one pill fixes everything like an aspirin does. So it actually, unfortunately, increased or caused me to have suicidal thoughts within 24 to 48 hours. And I stopped it immediately because I was able to recognize that it was the medication doing that, not my true thinking. And so one of the tools that we use in my practice is from gene site testing. And you can go to genesite.com. And what that does is, with the cheek swab, it checks your DNA and it gives you a list of medications that are going to work the best for you.
That's incredible. And there is a charge for it, but it is something that you can then pinpoint if it's going to be a drug that does not react well with your blood type or DNA or whatever. So I thought that was incredibly helpful, and that's GeneSight, GeneSight.com.
Right. .com.
I just wanted to get that out there in case there was somebody who needed that information. And you said a minute ago too, something that I think you said if you puffed up, and we talked about that too. You have a very great thoughts about puffing up and fluffing up.
So one of the things that we talked about is, again, is our body and how amazing it is. And so when we go through trauma, we've now discovered that it stays in the body. It stays in the muscles. The muscle has muscle memory. So one of the things that happened when I started shrinking down was, again, I mentioned my age earlier. I'm not the toned 20-year-old that I was, and losing weight this time, I started to see things move and sag and kind of get that deflated balloon. And somebody asked me, aren't you really worried as thin as you are now about all of this excess weight? And I said, you know what? I don't, because my body protected me. And I used the analogy of a puffer fish. And so when a puffer fish is attacked, it swells up as its defense mechanism, right? Well, then when it's safe, it shrinks back down again. And for a lot of people that have experienced trauma that start to overeat and get in that cycle, their body's puffing up. And I said, the blessing is that now that I'm in a better space and my body shrank, I can go down like that. But the stretch marks that I have, the loose skin that I have, are all battle scars from when my body did what it was supposed to and protected me and literally held me together through some of the worst events of my life. And so I'm not embarrassed by it anymore. Now, it doesn't mean I'm just going to run naked down the street by any means, but things that would have held me back, or, for example, we had a family gathering at a pool this weekend. I took my shirt off. I would never have done that before, ever. My niece actually took a picture of it and posted it on Facebook, for God's sakes. But anyway,
don't do it.
Right? Before I would have been horrified. And this time I'm like, you know what? I'm proud. I'm proud of that guy. Number one, I'm in a pair of small size shorts, which I never would have thought it would happen. But two, I looked at me and appreciated myself for who I am, where I've came from, and the path that I'm on. And I appreciate that about myself now. And that's a position and a way of looking at me that I wouldn't have had a year ago.
Was there more self-care that went into all of this transition then, when you're saying looking at yourself? Like that's developing some other thought patterns too then, to go through this, focused on the weight all the time, to now getting to a point of pain, your desperation, but now seeing this blessing of better health coming back to you. But you're saying your frame of mind, was it simply because of that, or did you do other things too to just bring that about? Like, did you continue to meet your past friend who could talk things over with you or anything like that? Because you're kind of in the business. I mean, it's kind of a good thing to do.
Yeah, I'm in the business. That can also be the crutch too, because I can talk myself in and out of about anything that way.
True.
But no, I didn't talk about. I do send him messages every so often. I've told him about my progress. I've encouraged him to share Bright Lines with other clients that he has that may be struggling with food addiction and trauma and those type of things. For me, I've always been one that likes to learn and improve and try to be the best version of myself. I think, if anything, what this is about truly is about my brain being able to think clearer and look at things from different ways. I also, I'm at a different point in my life too. As I mentioned, with my age now, I look at life differently. My perspective is different. My perspective's changed. But I really think healing my brain and getting my brain to where it's functioning the optimal best has been a big part of that.
Right. And speaking of having kind of a different mindset, I just want to comment here. You have such a beautiful attitude, is a comment that was made from Cynthia. You know, and it's making that connection with that your skin has protected you. Your body has protected you through all of the trauma. I think that's such a beautiful insight. If we can remember that that body's been with us through thick and thin, truly. And, you
Yes,
know,
ma'am, it has.
it's not just about the food. It's not just about the food, but, you know, even like you're talking about the inflammation piece, that makes so much sense. That I didn't really think about that it does puff you up. I know that I was there with my swollen feet and painful knee. And maybe that's why I was thinking that it was almost like a sport for a while when I was losing weight, because I was going through sizes faster than what seemed logical. And I had a lot of sizes in my closet to go through. So they were all there. And I'm like, how is this happening? But you went through 4 sizes in 50 days. So anyway, here's a question.
Isn't that crazy?
It is. So here's a question from Ed. You are touching on the potential connection between experienced trauma and disordered eating. Any thoughts for folks stuck in disordered eating? I want to be bright, but even if there is a strong desire to be fully bright, is there any thought on that you have for them?
Well, I mean, hold on, because the reality is, if there's trauma, you have to be able to face that trauma, and that's not an easy thing to do. You know, it's easy to say, well, just love yourself, or just, you know, just do the bright lights, or just do this. For me, back where I was at, I couldn't face anything. I mean, I was sick. I was afraid I was losing my health. I was afraid of what was going to happen to me and what that would mean to my family. And the anxiety in me was becoming overwhelming. So I had to shut all of that out. The perceived trauma, the depression, I had to just go, you know what? I can't with all of that. I can't. What can I do? Well, it's breakfast. What do I need? I need oatmeal. Okay. And I need some yogurt for my protein. Okay. And I need 6 ounces of fruit. So my banana weighs 4, and I can add 2 ounces of blueberries, and here's my breakfast. And for me, it took it really literally to going back to that basic. I can't control anything else. I can't control if my family's going to get sick. I can't control if I'm going to get sicker. I can control what's on my plate for this meal right in front of me. You know, we talk about the willpower gap and that how that's so small. You know, I don't know that I had a lot of willpower, but I was afraid and I was sick. And so I could go from one meal to the next. And I've also learned things like, if for me personally, I need to eat now about 5 o'clock, 5:30. If I eat at 5 and 5:30 and eat my meal, then I'm stuffed, I'm full, I'm good for the rest of the night. If I wait till about 6, 6:30, 7, I start getting really hungry, and I have a tendency to overeat or want to eat more. So I have to purposely weigh myself or weigh my food and eat it slowly so that hunger will go back down so that I don't overeat. And you'll learn little tricks like that along the way when you pay attention and you get that clutter and that noise out of your head and can really truly listen to what's going on in your body.
Here's a question. Can a person have trauma and not realize it?
Absolutely. You know, one of the things that our society is wonderful at is play in the comparison game. And a lot of times, and especially for men, I mean, women do it too, but with men, it's, well, I can't feel emotion. I can't cry. I can't do all of these things because that wouldn't mean I'm a man. Okay. And for women, it's, well, yes, I had these horrible things happen, but maybe my sister had it worse, or my aunt had it worse, or my best friend had it much worse. And somehow that invalidates the trauma that you have. So since I didn't have it that bad, it didn't affect me. That's bull, frankly.
I totally went through that many times. Like, what am I worried about this for when I'm so blessed? I have a home, I have a bed, and others do not. And I would constantly put myself in that frame that somehow those feelings, the trauma I'm going through really doesn't matter because I'm so blessed to have a home and a bed, those.
Well, and we're taught that,
Yes.
We're told, well, count your blessings. We're told, well, just look on the positive side of things. And that's so very important. It does. A positive mindset does so much. But what people don't realize is they have to acknowledge that level of trauma to begin with. They have to acknowledge that hurt. They have to acknowledge that pain. And only when you're willing to really acknowledge it, to stare it in the face, to hold on to it and say, you're a part of me, I experienced this, then are you able to take away its power and for the healing to truly start.
And would you say, like, if you can afford it, get some professional help? If that's not something that you can afford, even getting those thoughts on paper to validate them, to journal, to maybe confide in someone who you are close to at least get those thoughts out and acknowledge them. I don't know. I'm not a professional, but I know that.
One of the things
holding inside. Yeah. Go ahead.
One of the things that I talk about now is the freedom of education. You could truly, through YouTube and Zoom meetings and podcasts and whatever, you can literally become an expert in any field you chose for free. I mean, obviously, other than paying for the internet, those costs, but the resources are out there. You can study whatever you want to, and there's so many wonderful ways to do it. Tonight we're talking about just a few of them. We're just talking about changing your eating and what that affects. And this is completely free. And so, yes, if you can afford it, find a therapist. However, please know that like the medication, all therapists are different. Their personalities are different. And just because you go to 1 or 2 or 10 and it didn't work out doesn't mean that next one may not click with you and give you what you need. And it may not be, 6 weeks of therapy. It may be one sentence, one time that totally clicks with you and gives you the information to change your life. Mine, even though I have my master's and I've worked in the field and all these things, it took my friend sending me a link to a book to say, here, check this out and see what you think. And now, because of that, I've been opened up to a whole different world. I have my men's group. I have you now. I have a bigger audience and more understanding, and I'm learning things and hearing things all on this journey that was so much more than the book I bought.
It's so incredible. I do feel that once you start taking care of yourself, you are like opened up. Because if you're hurting, no matter which way, it doesn't even have to be about the weight, but if you're hurting, it's so hard to think outward to help anybody else, isn't it? I mean, because you have to think about survival, like getting through the day, how will I do my work? I mean, you're a devoted dad and husband and grandfather. It's like you have these priorities in your life. I'm going to get through whether I'm hurting or not. That's, how you think. But boy, when you can get rid of the pain, whether it's physical, mental, whatever pain, you are so much able, I think, to give more of yourself. It starts there.
One of the things
go ahead,
that I had to learn was I'm such a giver and I'm such a doer for my family and those around me that the thought of self-care, what is that? No, I don't have time for self-care because I'm giving to everybody else. And that was a very hard concept for me to learn or acknowledge that I needed. And again, that comes from my trauma because at certain times I wasn't cared for. So I purposely overcared for everybody else.
Yeah.
And so for those of us and then of course ate to self-soothe and to go through all of that. When I started, one of the assignments my therapist gave me was to start practicing self-care. I had to report back for the first few weeks I saw him what I was doing for self-care. And that was hard. That was very hard for me to do because I didn't have time for that. I had to do what energy I had to give my family. You know, we all laugh about the air mask on the airplane when they tell you you have to put your own oxygen mask on first before you can help others. And truly, you know, Bright Lines for me was that oxygen mask. It was something I did. The rest of my family did not do Bright Lines. My wife is supportive and cooks things that are appropriate for me, and she will fix my food, but she's not necessarily following the plan. And so I was still doing it on my own. And I knew that that was part of my self-care and frankly, my survival, that I had to do that for myself. I couldn't care, you know, what anybody else was doing.
Well, I cannot believe the time here, Verlin. What would you say are those non-scale victories then for you at the top of the list that have come from this way of life?
A clearer mind, the ability to pass this on, to pass this knowledge on to other people. You know, we talked about that the other night. I'm still trying to think of so many because there are. I mean, you know, we laugh about them every day, from fitting into a chair to realizing that I can, you know, I can bend down and tie my shoes and not think about it. For some of us, that we can just go buy clothes off the rack and it fits. You know, there's so many of those non-scale things like that. But truly for me, again, because it's not tied to a size and a weight that I'm weighing right now, it's tied to a way of life. And the fact that it's not only worked and I've embraced it, but now that I'm able to share it with others.
It's so awesome. And so here we are, the last question. If somebody is here listening tonight or by podcast or YouTube, and thanks for letting me record this, what would you say to them about trying or not trying, just jumping in with Bright Line Eating?
You know, give it a try. If you're not a reader, listen to the audiobook. That's what I did. And give it a try. You have nothing to lose. And you know what? It doesn't matter if this is your first time, your 10th time, your 15th time. There's some other piece of education that you're going to get. There's going to be a different point in your life. I shared a thing today with my group that said, essentially, don't worry about tomorrow or that. Just use today's energy for today. And so with Bright Lines, don't worry about, can I do this in the first try? Can I do this? Just get started. Start this as part of your path. Start this as part of your journey, you know, and maybe your lines aren't bright every day or, you know, for all meals. But did you have one bright meal today? You know, that's one more than you had. You're trying something new. You're taking that step. It doesn't matter how many steps. It's not a competition. This is about healing you. And the end result will be worth it.
Wow, Verlin, thank you so much for sharing your story. I just really appreciate your vulnerability and just helping in such a beautiful way, even the way that you framed, you know, our skin. A simple thing as skin that I know I've gotten hung up about in the past, but to hear you talk about that, it's literally been with us through the tough times. And, you know, it's time to embrace that and as part of our walk, and that we're still here to carry our skin with us, and just all the other good and great things that you shared. Thank you so much. I'm just going to close as I do each week. Good night. Stay bright. Don't let the bed bugs bite. Good night, everybody. So, Verlin, how would you like to play 3-Question Thursday?
I'm excited about this bonus round. Let's do this.
Okay, bonus round. Here we go, where nobody knows the questions, including me. But I have to ask you, because here you are, losing a whole pile of weight, going through 4 sizes. Were you getting tired of going to the store every other week? How did you manage that? Or did you just have a closet full anyway? What was your strategy?
Well, I did have a closet full to begin with. I actually tapped my local Goodwill and Salvation Army because, for one, it benefits my community when I shop there. For two, you can find quality clothes that are very inexpensive. And then what I do is, I may buy a shirt for $5 and then I turn around and donate it, either by just posting it on our local swap thing or taking it to the men's shelter or whatever. And the reality was I was going through so many sizes so quickly. And we all know, for women, a size 10 dress at one store is a 14 in one and an 8 in another. And similarly with men, with how the shirts are cut and the pants fit and those kind of things. So I just decided that I wasn't going to spend a lot of money to invest in a new wardrobe until I get to my normal size body and stay there for a while. Because again, my pattern has been I've dropped down to weight, got a cute outfit or two, and then, gained the weight back and only wore it 2 times. So for me, now I would do fun things like I would go to the store and try on a pair of jeans that I thought there's no way these are going to fit me, and just be in total shock and dismay when they did. But I still wouldn't buy them because, I'm on this for the long haul. So let's see what we get. So now that I'm in my more right size body, that one of the pictures, my after picture that you showed, those are a pair of jeans that I was very excited to get. They're 29, for goodness sakes. I don't think there's middle school kids that wear a 29. Here I am at 29. So I bought those because that was a celebration. They were a little bit more expensive, and I'm starting to add in a few pieces of quality, clothing at this time. But no, I shopped at Goodwill and then donated that.
Well, you know what? Now this begs the question that you're saying that you're turning around and donating it back. That's telling me that you're pretty confident of where you are right now. What does that feel like to have this newborn confidence after level 5, 50 years? Now you're in confidence mode. How does that feel like, compared to the past?
It feels amazing, really. Now, to be very honest, there is a part of me that still goes, are you going to be able to maintain this? And that's just being, honest on a gut level with y'all. I kind of wonder, but again, I know my body's rhythms. I know I've went up and down, but I also know now I've held this same weight within a pound or two for 3 months, almost 4 months now. So I'm feeling very good about, even, because guys have heavy days too, when we just feel heavy and bloated and whatever. I mean, it's just part of our bodies, right? So even on those days, it doesn't trigger me. Whereas before I'd be like, see, here I go, I'm going up the scales. I might as well eat because what? Okay, so I'm bloated today. I'm still sticking to plan. You're not going to get me off course of this plan. So this,
and you've got community. You've got community Snapchatting meals. I mean, that is awesome to have that kind of back and forth. I have one more question.
My guys are amazing.
They sound amazing. One more question. You mentioned it briefly, that you kind of at the spur of the moment said, my thing is eating, I guess. It, compared to like your dad and the situation that you lived with. What does Verlin today think about that younger child who thought that way, with what you've gained in knowledge and what you've lived in your life now?
What I think is the most interesting is, again, it kind of goes back to that comparison. Well, as long as I'm not doing drugs and I'm not doing alcohol, then I don't have an addiction. Now, I've always been too tight with my money to ever gamble, so that was never going to be an issue. But looking back now, I just want to weep for the boy that went through so much trauma, honestly. And I feel like me staying with my healthy meals is a visual representation 3 times a day that I'm healed, or that I've healed past that. I think we continue to heal on an ongoing basis. I don't know that we ever reach it, because at different levels, we're able to look at ourselves differently. and we're able to remember those situations differently. But certainly having that confidence and realizing the power of what I've overcome by facing my traumas and making a different choice.
Wow. And you know what else, just from my observation, getting to know you in this Zoom chat tonight, I see a man who's, like I said, devoted to his family and now leaving such a tremendous legacy, living a legacy really right now, and also being able to bless others with the knowledge that you have found the hard way, the life way, but now, you know, you can just share very easily because it's in you. It's a part of you. And you're just like a walking, breathing testimonial that you can heal thyself with good food. I mean, all things good. You're not the only, I mean, I believe Christianity and just that there's a God. We're all, you know, driven by our God, but that we have the power to turn things around in one day, one meal at a time, one thought at a time.
You know, it's interesting. You're very much right. It's sometimes it seems so simple, but it all starts with action. And when you take that first step, you know, you're on that journey. And it doesn't matter if you fall, you get back up. We look at children, they fall all the time, and we encourage them, we pick them up. You can do this, you've got this. And guess what? Kids get up, they walk, they run, and they go on with life, right? If we could only treat ourselves that same way, you know, it's okay to stumble, it's okay to fall. Pick yourself up. You've got this.
We sure do. Well, Verlin, thanks again so much for sharing your story. And thank you for playing 3-Question Thursday.
Absolutely.
It's been great. Really appreciate it.
It's been wonderful. Thank you so much.
So good to know you, and all the best to you. Thanks, everybody, for being here. Good night.
Thank
Stay
you.
bright.